And remember, every Wednesday we speak about women, we speak to women, we speak for women right here on Sunrise Live. It's the gender agenda. And this morning we're so glad to be joined by Priscilla Nyokabi, who's no stranger to many of us, been working in the human rights movement for quite a while. And she's now the county women's representative for Nyeri County, just been elected there. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so
for
much.
coming. So we want to talk about, there's a lot of things that are happening in Nyeri, of course. Let's talk about your background. We know you from Kituo cha Sheria, and then from that, from human rights activism into politics. When did that realization happen for you, that now you, from pushing for human rights, you now need to be involved in the process?
I mean, I think for myself it wasn't really politics per se, it's more leadership, and it's more the new opportunities with the constitution. At Kituo cha Sheria we represented poor people and marginalized groups, and we went to parliament a lot of times to lobby for different positions. I remember one time when we were asking the country to buy more cancer machines. We just had represented a group of persons living with albinism, and most of them died by the age of 40, and so we were really sad about it. And going to parliament, I started realizing the answers are not in law, the answers are in resources, the answers are in allocation, the answers are in leadership. And I knew then that I needed to seek a leadership position to be able to just, you know, try my bit in influencing some of these decisions.
Okay, and so you decided to go to Nyeri. Many people will ask, but we know you for your work with Kituo cha Sheria. Right. You've been in Nairobi, and of course, you did fight for the rights of various disadvantaged people, not just in Nairobi, but around the country. But then everybody said, okay, Priscilla's going to Nyeri. Why now? Tell us about that.
I was born and brought up in Nyeri. My parents live there. We come from Udhaya in Karema, and I also had done a lot of work in Udhaya with the schools and with the education sector. I served on several school boards, was a guest of honor in most of the schools, you know, just telling people to read harder. So Nyeri was a natural choice for me, and I speak fluent Kikuyu. Okay. So it wasn't going to be that hard.
That's good, yes, absolutely, because everybody thinks a young woman who's done the work that you have would choose a more urban city setting as opposed to going to Nyeri. But what are the opportunities I think that the counties have opened up? I suppose that would be one of the reasons why you
I think that was also the other reason. And Nyeri County is one of the wealthier ones because of tea and coffee and milk, and it's really good geographical location. We've got infrastructure in the sense of being a developed place, having been a provincial headquarter for Central Province. I was at home, and I'm really at home in Nyeri, so I wanted to be part of a push with the new counties, and in particular women's agenda in the county level. Nairobi, everybody is here, so I was also happy to go back home to play my role in shaping the new county. Okay,
let's talk about the campaigns, what that was like for you. Was it difficult, obviously going for the women's rep seat, but you know, they always talk about the challenges that women face in an election in terms of gathering the resources for a campaign, because you were competing against other women as well who were able candidates just as you were. What were some of the challenges that you faced on the campaign trail?
One of the biggest challenges is the usual one of finances. When I went out, you know, being a poor people's lawyer, I guess you're also equally poor, so I didn't have a lot of money. I really hadn't made that much money. In any case, my age, you know, and the profession that we choose, and I don't come from a wealthy family, so I was very worried about finances and how I would finance the campaign. So that was always a challenge, and one of the ways I countered this was to tell the people the truth, that we have already paid our taxes. There is not any money that a leader needs to come with. All that they need to do is come and manage the taxes that we have paid. The other challenges are on culture, and you know, questions around where is your family, wapi mzee, mbona yuko kwa campaign, and you know, the culture, are we really ready for leadership? But also one of the things I found with the people and the older generation is like a retirement. We were retiring some of the older generation in this election, so people are quite ready for new leaders and younger leaders.
Okay. As a young woman on the campaign trail, obviously you talk about some of the questions that you get. So how do you handle that when people ask, okay, so wapi mzee, why are you here alone, why aren't you married, what's wrong, you know? When it gets to that point, does there come a time when, you know, it's just
I just took it on light humor and say mzee anaangalia watoto na mimi natafuta kiti, or just, you know, explain to them that in any case I'm the candidate. It is not my partner or my family that is running for office. It is me. na wale wanazidi sana unawaambia hii ni mambo ya Mungu pia.
That is right. That's absolutely right. Okay. So let's talk about we've been talking about this shift of civil society activists, and I think that started in 2002 with the coming of the Kibaki administration at the time. A lot of people who were in civil society now found it comfortable to be in government, and then that left civil society a little open and perhaps unprepared for that shift and that transition. And you were one of those people that's now moved from civil society into leadership. What's your take on strengthening now civil society when we see persons like Priscilla Nyokabi now not in civil society and in leadership?
I think that luckily with the civil society now it's become a lot more professional, and you know, we were lawyers and went into civil society to do human rights laws and human rights work. I think that organizations that are there now still have the same capacity to do the work that the civil society is supposed to do. It's a useful resource. I'm going now into a legislative role with a huge agenda. I knew bills on the women rights, the matrimonial, the marriage bill, the domestic violence, on transparency and governance. There's the freedom of information. In Kituo, where we represented the evictions clients, we know that the housing bill is important, the eviction laws are important. So then I go into the legislature with an agenda around laws that are pro-people, laws that will implement the Jubilee agenda, because I belong to the Jubilee coalition. The Jubilee coalition around jobs, around better welfare for the citizens. There are laws that will be important. So that's one thing that is helpful about coming from civil society into leadership. But then the civil society has got to regenerate itself. It's a sector. Right. So I think that at Kituo I created space for a friend of mine who's now also the director, the incoming director of the organization. But I think also the other thing that has happened for me in the politics is the negativity of the word activist. I mean, I just thank God I'm a lawyer, because I explained to everyone, mimi ni wakili, wakili Nyokabi. It's really not a negative term. It is okay for all of us to aspire to a better society. And that is what people in civil society just do. It's not anything else we're asking for. We're just asking for a better Kenya for all of us. Okay,
but there also, like you mentioned, needs to be that sort of transition mechanism that allows those in civil society to take up those positions once you know, persons move into other spheres of it. And a young woman who's an activist, you do know the questions about will she be able to have a family, and it goes back to that again, right? Being an activist, being a woman, being young, and being a lawyer all in one.
And being from Nyeri.
And being
doesn't help matters either.
As well, yes, indeed. And so it must be tough, but you managed to sail through. Let's talk about the role of the county women's rep. We cannot overemphasize this enough, because I think a lot of civic education needs to be done. We still get the questions like, so what will be the work of the county women's rep? What do you believe your role will be as county women's rep for the residents of Nyeri County?
I think the work is in two levels, because the seat or the space where you have to work is the National Assembly. This is a representative seat. You're a member of parliament. In fact, the title for the IEBC is Woman Member of National Assembly. So the roles of the National Assembly, representation, oversight, lawmaking and budget processes, all of those roles we continue to have them. But there is the additional role of the women agenda. Nobody else really would take up that role as actively as the women reps would. So we have an added sort of mandate in terms of women issues, both at the national level, because there's a lot of work to be done. When we met the president-elect last week, and he was speaking about portfolio and strategic portfolios for women, it's not just the 1/3. We look at you know, an agriculture ministry going to women, the health ministry perhaps, the water ministry, even finance. You know, one of these days we should get a minister of finance who's also a woman. Justice, we've had that. So that strategic portfolio. So there's a lot of work that we'll do in the National Assembly to make sure that the women keep moving up in terms of positions of representation. I also think that they should consider maybe deputy presidents. I know about the wage bill, but the only way also to bring in women to positions of influence is to consider new positions and what we call constitutional silences. It's not very clear whether we can have deputy cabinet secretaries, deputy principal secretaries, but if you want to promote more women and even younger women, remember we're now also asking for the purple zebra, one old woman, one young woman, one old, one young, so that the young ones also don't get left out of this sharing agenda. But at the county level, There is the governor, the senator, and the woman rep who are elected across the constituencies. So working very closely with the governor in terms of the development agenda. Remember, counties are about development and services, and making sure that the women at the county level also don't lose out, and that the agenda of the development or the governor's agenda takes into consideration women issues like water. In my county, if you give the women water and you know, in adequate quantities, you solve one big problem that is keeping our women backward.
Okay. And speaking of some of those challenges that are facing the women of Nyeri County, that you will be looking to solve, water is one of them. I guess a lot of people would not think of Nyeri County as having water shortage because, you know, it's located at that level, you know, right next to some of the forests of this country and in the highlands. But let's talk about the challenges faced by the women of Nyeri County, whom you will be representing.
I think the other big one now is on the children and the youth, and especially the alcohol problem. Again, the mothers carry the weight of society's problems. So the mothers carry that weight of all these young people. In Nyeri, we call them buroti, the shopping centers or the trading centers. All of our burotis now are full of young men who are high from morning, sometimes till evening. So there's a question of law. It's regrettable Mutudo is no longer in parliament, but I think that Mutudo law was going to be helpful to counties like my own, and then creating employment and education and making sure that there is a place to absorb all this mass of young people. So that's a big issue for women, and it's related now to health, it's related to security, it's brought with it a couple of other issues.
Right.
I know there is the old one that you want to bring up.
We will come to that in just a moment, and those are the questions that are coming in on Twitter. By the way, I sourced her out on the internet. Her Twitter handle is Wakili Nyokabi, at Wakili Nyokabi. So any questions that you have, tweet us at Yvonne Okwara, at Wakili Nyokabi, at KTN Kenya, and we will definitely be posing them to Priscilla Nyokabi, who joins us this morning from Nyeri County. So you know, alcohol is a very big problem all over the country, but most especially in Nyeri, perhaps because it's highlighted more. There's probably other areas in this country that face the same crisis. What for you would be the solution towards just getting those young people at the trading centers, like you've mentioned, away from alcohol?
I think this is part of the governor's own agenda, is employment creation. We've just got to create more job opportunities, and using our agriculture. We are heavily an agricultural county, so using the agriculture sector to create employment in value addition, in processing, in increased productivity of agricultural products, in marketing those products. So if we get our agricultural sector right, then there will be some job creation there. But then the other thing will be the education sector. We've got a problem with the transition rates. How many people leave primary school, go off to secondary school, and go off to polytechnic and to skills. So if we could sort out that transition level, that the young men and young women, actually, all the children go to primary, go off to secondary, and then go off to tertiary institutions, and put in skills that make them employable, what we call employable skills. That would take the education about 21 years. So my own view would be also legislate and have alcohol start at 21, although a lot of parents tell me, why 21, maybe 25. But that might be a bit too high of an age limit. But so cut out alcohol consumption for anybody who's below 21 years.
Indeed. All right. And that being an issue there. Philip Patale, thank you so much for tweeting in, as always, the question that we were getting into. He says, Wakili Nyokabi is a renowned human rights activist. How is she going to ensure husband battering in Nyeri is curbed? I suppose what you're talking about, less abuse of alcohol, is one way.
Yeah, and then there's also the role of the church. Again, the law and the government are not able to take care of everything. But the husband battery thing is really more news than the reality of the situation. I think what we want to deal with is domestic violence from either gender, and not just in Nyeri, but at the country level. So I did mention to you that there's a domestic violence bill that's been pending before it was approved by the last cabinet. The president-elect spoke about it, and so I think that particular legislation will be coming on the floor. But then there is also what we call arbitration or dispute resolution, that is not really divorce, that is not really separation, but where couples can get cancelled and can speak about their issues. You know, the collapse of the elders system is not helping our lives, because we now no longer go to elders, but we don't have anywhere else where those kind of disputes can get articulated. So if we have ADR center for family law. I think that would help Nyeri.
Okay.
And then peaceful living for all citizens, and understanding what is criminal law. If you beat a spouse, then you're no longer a spouse, you're now, you know, subject of criminal law proceedings.
All right, okay. And of course, then what you alluded to before, being a young woman from Nyeri doesn't help. There's that negative connotation for a Nyeri woman. A Nyeri woman is said to be this, and there's that stereotype. She's said to be that. And we will not repeat those stereotypes. But what do you think you can do to sort of help do that? Because you're sitting here calm and quiet and soft-spoken.
Not slapping anyone.
And not slapping anyone. I don't think there's anyone in my crew here who can claim to have been, you know, mistreated. But is it just maybe who we are as a nation, that we see a story coming out of a certain region and we're very quick to stereotype?
I think so.
And what role do you think you can play, if any, in terms of just removing that negativity associated with a Nyeri woman?
Yeah, I think that we've got to deal with the image, and especially now that the counties are going to be competing for business. It's not very good if we are thought to be the militant county.
That's right.
So there's some work to be done on our image. But I also think that it is a good thing for women to be assertive. It is a good thing for women to speak for themselves, and for women to be able to get out there and also get their lives moving positively and forward. And so I think this whole agenda of empowering women is going to be important. By the time there is domestic violence, a lot of other social issues are on core. And if you look at the reproductive health system as well, making sure that works, the family planning systems are working, that women are really in control of their bodies and in control of their work, and that we have positive relationships between men and women. So we start that with the boy child. So, you know, if I speak to girls, if I speak to boys in schools, then we're going to speak about these positive relationships and just make sure that we now have a positive culture and positive engagement. And then the jokes, for me, I didn't mind too much. I remember when we were in the university, we used to say, I'm from El Bago, you know, just cancel out all this Nyeri pattern. So some of it also is just societal. I mean, there's always a story about some other one region or the other, but it needs now to be turned into a positive script, because they are indeed families. All our parents are married, they're still in their marriages 20-30 years into it. I mean, it's a religious area. We are very heavily mainstream, you know, Christian churches and also the evangelical churches. So there will be a positive script, and I hope that you guys in media will not highlight the single incident of husband who was battered for alcoholism.
And hopefully, and some of the measures like you've talked about, you know, curbing alcoholism, because that is also the root of the problem. If that can be sorted out, then you know, a lot of these things can be done. And when we speak about women and who are assertive, sometimes it's taken the wrong way. And over the last couple of years, any woman that stands up and says, look, this is what I speak for, this is what I stand for, often, you know, gets the flack of society, like, you know, women aren't supposed to. Does this still surprise you that in 2013 we still do have this attitude? And how much time do you estimate it'll take for us to get to the point where a woman who's assertive is not necessarily, then, you know, receiving the wrath of society?
I think that luckily now, in terms of law and the new constitution, a copy of which I brought here, we've got the deadline by the Supreme Court until 2015 that we have the 2/3 rule completely implemented in this country. I think the more women that come out to leadership, the more role models we have of women leaders, the more positive contribution the women leaders bring to the table. I think that those kind of stereotypes and the labeling for women will come to an end. And I think it's also got to start with us, that if a woman is asserting her right, that's just what she's doing. She's not offending the society. She's asserting her rights, she's asserting herself, and starting to praise those heroines who are doing that. And
women in politics, obviously we've seen a great leap now. We have 47 positions for women, and that's a good thing. And we're talking about the progressive implementation of that gender rule by 2015. But here's a question that we're getting on Twitter, by the way. If you keep them coming in, we will be airing them live on Sunrise Live today. Sir Charles says, women now have 5 years to overturn the poor showing at the polls. Despite the fact that we had the 47 seats that were set aside for women, that was a good thing, but we still don't have any woman governor, woman senator. What is the strategy? And that's what Sir Charles is asking, going forward in the next 5 years, do you think, for women to now make sure in 2017 or 2018, whenever we'll have the election, that we'll have more women, and two, perhaps more persons voting for women?
Well, we in Jubilee are happy that of the 16 women who were elected, 75% are from the Jubilee side. So that's, I'm also from a region where we elected, I'm from Udaya, actually, where we brought in Mary Wamboi, despite all of the tensions that there were, and also Honorable Murugi from Nyeri town. So we have 2 women. Well, unfortunately, also for my county, we didn't vote any county assembly reps as women, and so we have to go to the nominated seats. So part of it will be the law, that the implementing framework for law, the law that requires all of the 2/3 rule to be implemented, all those laws have got to be brought in. But that's only one part of the story. I think that the political parties to do more. The Political Parties Act required 1/3 of the candidates to be women, and the parties to go out of their way to finance, to influence, to motivate, to mobilize women to join parties. I think those of us who've joined the parties now have to really put a lot of effort in that. And then there's the whole role of mentoring and mentorship, and making sure that the women who've gone ahead, I'm really hoping that Martha Karua, for example, despite having been a presidential candidate who didn't do well, remains a useful force for the rest of the women who want to go into politics, and starts to, I hope she can even start an academy or something and just teach us what it means to go into politics and to be an effective legislator. And then there is the media as well, helping us to highlight positive contribution of women in development. The men as well. Remember, the women, the genders are related. So if we can also have some role models in the men around appreciation of women and their role. I'm hoping that the president-elect, for example, you know, being a father of 2 sons and 1 daughter, you know, you should allow, for example, the daughters to inherit, and let's see real positive modeling in our society that allows women then to come out and be on equal footing with the men.
All right, so highlighting a lot of that, you've spoken about Martha Karua, and we know she's been an inspiration for you over the years. Talk to us about Martha Karua, the woman, the person that you aspired to be like in your youth as you were coming up in the legal profession, and also in positions of leadership. And you've mentioned a little bit about the role that you think Martha Karua can play.
I was really happy to have met her early on in a forum in which she spoke to the women who were going into politics. And I remember her explaining the campaign, because we were all worried about money. And she said campaign is like raising children. Some children grow up in wealth, some children grow up where there is no money, and all the children grow up. And sometimes the children who even grow up where there is no money turn out just as well. So I was happy with those messages. So I think that she's been a role model to us who come from law, from the activism field, from the reform agenda, you know. The only thing for me I hope would happen is a little bit more negotiation and a little bit more more collaboration with other partners. So in terms of the fullness of time, well, I'm still deciding what kind of image will be good for me, and there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm a lawyer. I want to do some legal work, but I also want to be useful in the women's agenda. So we'll see which kind of committees are good. But I think in the end, we want every woman's individual characteristics and the positive side to come out. There are many other role models. I just came in when you were showing Joki's and Joki Dongo's show. I think that she's also a role model in her own way. I think we had Millie Odhiambo in the last parliament, really being an active legislator, you know, being a vice chair of a committee, an important committee. There are also women like Charity Ngilu who've been in the activism, and was the first woman to run for president in this country, setting the stage for a lot of others. And also the political, there is the Women Parliamentarians Caucus. The founders are 3, Charity Ngilu and Martha Karua and Beth Mogo. So I'm sure we will have a lot of those examples to follow up on.
Is there enough mentoring within women's circles, and now not just in leadership, in politics, but also, do you think in the boardroom, because you've worked now in the private sector, now going into a legislative role, do you think that women hold each other's hands and there's enough mentorship that, you know, you pass that on to a younger woman and then she passes it on and on and on, that would then perhaps ensure that we have a critical mass of women who have the capacity to lead the country?
I think there's always a room for improvement. A bit of that went on with the women rights NGOs and with the women leaders and the situation room that they created during the election time for women. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. I would, for example, love to read a book on Mother Karua. I would love her to document and chronicle her life struggles, her life stories, just like what we have of Hillary Clinton and what we have of women in the other parts of the world who are also championing this agenda. So we have a lot of work to do to instill that mentorship that you're speaking about, so that in the next election 2017, in fact this is a shorter term, this is not going to be a full 5-year parliament, it's being 4 years and a few months, so that in 2017 then we really do have more women being elected into positions of leadership, including the governorship and the senatorship. So that mentorship, that work, that review, I think just like IEBC is auditing and COD is auditing and everybody is auditing the elections, I think we women also have to audit our performance in the 2013 election so that we are ready for 2017.
Okay, absolutely. Taking a look at that audit process and looking at what it is that perhaps women need to do better, what would you say, and I think perhaps we can comfortably ask you this question, would be the thing that women need to do more when they're on the campaign trail to ensure success? We know about the challenges that they face, particularly with finances and with overcoming cultural stereotypes. But what do you think they're not doing enough of that they need to do more?
I think explaining themselves and explaining why they need to go into leadership, and explaining why leadership matters, that it really matters who is your leader, even in terms of daily life. The reason why we won't have enough schools is because of the leaders we choose. We won't have good roads if we choose a corrupt person, and women sometimes use resources better than men. So bringing out the positive attributes of women, we think with our heart, so making sure that people understand it's a really good combination when you can think with your head and the heart. And that as a leader then you're much better, because you can think with your head but you've got your heart in it as well. I think that going forward for the women movement, and I like the conversations we had. I once also listened to Elizabeth Ongoro speaking to women leaders during the launch of the charter on the women's agenda in Bomas, and she said, have an agenda. Don't even leave your home until you're sure why you want to be a leader. So I listened to her very keenly. So when I started out, I had this agenda in 7 points, and I said the things that I want to do, and I just stayed relatively very loyal to that script, because then you don't get torn, you don't get distracted, you're really focused and you're moving forward with your campaign. So those kind of advices and the agenda for the women, articulation, I think that most of us, when you go to the US and they teach you, oh, look me in the eye, we are taught not to look people in the eye.
That's right.
In fact, in African culture, you taught us bad manners to look people in the eye.
That's true.
And then when you have to be a leader, you have to look people in the eye and speak to them. So I think that it is going to be a change of all those cultures, what we teach our women, what we teach the girls, and even the messages, like the father still say, well, umeshindwa na msichana. Those messages are really terrible. Msichana hafai kushinda. So even, I know even in law school, we had lecturers who said, it is surprisingly the girls are doing better. What is surprising about girls doing better? There is no surprise. I think that you should just report the marks and the records. Even when more girls take up sciences, there is some comments in the staff rooms. I serve on school boards, so I know at nyinyi chemistry ni ngumu. When the young girls are trying to choose science, the teacher is deviating them. So those messages, we all need to check ourselves so that we grow up well. And the last example for me is also the purchase of the doll and the car. When you buy the boy a car and you buy the girl a doll, you are also explaining the roles early on. I think both of us should be bought the car. Then it starts early on to show that I can also drive a car. So parenting.
Conditioning that women are exposed to, I think, from an early age. We've had Maimuna Mwidao here on the show, and she's been talking about, we've gotten the word out that women are as important as men and that they have their spaces. Can we move from the point of activism now into just formulating that policy, if not implementing it as well? The days of going out onto the streets of women saying haki yetu and we, what a man can do, a woman can do better, have we formally moved off from that position of being in the streets and pushing for our rights to now actually at the boardroom level, at the legislature level where you are? Is that an agreement or an argument that you agree with?
I think that's going to be the new space and the new forum. And also, when you have a country that is democratizing and developing, then the skills now move to policy work, the skills move to implementation. In fact, what we need now largely is to implement this new constitution. In Nyeri, for example, our governor will have 10 seats to appoint cabinet, because we have a cabinet of 10 from the 30 county assembly reps. Right. If you do the 2/3 rule, that means that at the very least there should be 4 women at the county executive level. So let us at least move towards implementation now of what we already have existing. And then the women have to come out, they have to apply. If the loan funds come, you remember the Jubilee promise of a women enterprise fund with lower interest or no interest at all, then you have to take advantage of that situation. And then from the policy level, we need to create even more policies. Remember, the best position is still parity, is 50-50. So now we are still speaking about 2/3. So we also have some distance to go in terms of parity. But just as a last warning to men, or just as to caution ourselves, we are not trying to take the spaces for men. We are not coming to sit on them. We are just coming to both be equal so that we can build our society. At the county level in Nyeri, I know the men have been afraid that sasa wewe uta-represent kina mama peke yao. Hapana, you represent everyone. Just that you have a more keen view of the women's agenda. But increasingly we want a county where men on one side, women on the other side, and that county is moving forward. Nobody is left behind, and nobody is crying that everybody is enjoying the development benefit.
Indeed, and just on that note, there's a lot of talk now because of empowerment of women. There's the emasculation of men, and you know that the boy child has now been neglected. Do you think we've gotten to that point yet where there's more opportunities for women at the expense of the boy child, for example?
I think there's going to be need for attention of the boy child. Like this alcohol problem, maybe there's something there to look at for the boy child, and also the role models. The fathers are getting less and less of the scene, and the mothers are getting to be more and more active, and so our homes are starting to be a little bit more maternal in terms of who's the more visible parent. So there's some work on the boy child as well, to make sure that as we empower the girl, we don't lose the one who was originally doing well. But then increasingly we just be that create more opportunities, create more education opportunities for all the children, create more employment opportunities, and then make sure that the women are coming up at the same rate as the men.
2017 is not too far away, because I think when we're talking about this election, before it just seemed like it was so far away. In fact, when we were talking about it in 2012, then it was pushed to 2013, and it just seemed like a long distance ahead. What do you see as some of the improvements, the key improvements for women, not just in Nyeri County, but also for women in general by 2017?
I think the numbers first in terms of governance and leadership and the portfolios that they get to hold. There will also be their contribution. We hope that we don't have another Nancy Baraza incident, and that the women really are going to move forward. So I think that in the next 5 years that push ought to be going on. But then there is more investment in reproductive health, more investment in education, and more investment in creating job opportunities for the youth, both male and female. I think that in the next 5 years, if we keep to that agenda, then by 2017 we'll be seeing visible results of the investment.
And hopefully more women as well. And that's very important that you mentioned that now that women have more spaces after this election than ever before, that impact needs to be felt. Or else by 2017 a lot of people will say, well, so why did we have 47 seats set aside for women around the country? So it's also important for women such as yourself, don't you think, to have a results-oriented
we have
sort
to
of
really work hard. We the women reps are going to really work hard, otherwise people will say there was no reason to create this position. We've started a discussion also on our role and our funding. Remember, we have no budget for this office of the woman representative, so we have to structure and shape this office so that it's productive and it has results. And then in the committees, we hope that the male colleagues will allow the women MPs and not consider us as a special category in terms of legislature, that when we go in again a bit of equality is applied, so we can sit in committees, we can chair committees, and we can really be useful in terms of the work of the legislature, that we are not just the women reps. You know, when you're in high school, there are all these people who we used to think that they are backdoor.
Yeah,
I hope that we don't get that.
The same thing happened even in campus. For a lot of us going in, we're told, oh, you came in with 1 point less. In some point, it wasn't true, but it always feel like you were handed the position, you know, on a platter. So I know exactly.
So I hope that that feeling is not there, that we have been elected. In fact, we had to run more, because remember, we ran in the counties and not in the constituencies.
That's right.
And now that we are here, we should say we're all here. Let us get on with the business of the country and with the business of the house.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Congratulations again. And we do wish you all the best. You have a great task ahead of you. And we hope that will be a shining beacon for women, that once we see women and we say, that's why we've been fighting for women in leadership all these years. This is why the results we have there. Priscilla, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm also happy to be here. Thank you.
Priscilla Nyokabi from Nyeri County, the home of her birth, and she's now back there as a leader, moving from activism into leadership. Like we've said, women have such a great responsibility when it comes to proving that this is why they have been asking and pushing for leadership in these spaces. Thank you for joining us on this particular session.